Hello, everybody. Um, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Michael Chisky. I'm the design team project manager with SRF Consulting that's doing the design for Link Transit in the city of Rochester. And today we're here to give you an update and to hear your questions about the public art aspect of this project. We're excited to be moving forward with this aspect of the project. It's something that was identified by the community as an important element early on, and it's great to be meeting with you here today to see level of interest and hear from you. Some of your initial thoughts or questions about the process. Next slide, please. So we have a fair amount of information available online, and what we want to do today is spend a limited amount of time at the outset just to give you an update on the request for qualifications that's out there, and a little bit on the design of the project, realizing that this will be very new for many of you, and we want to make sure we set a good foundation as we look forward to this opportunity. So this is, I guess, a little bit of a philosophical statement that is included in the RFQ, and want to make note of a couple different aspects of it. Art is envisioned to be an integral part of the station, and by that we mean that the design team has developed station shelter and platform designs that are intentionally bold and unique. If you were to look around other locations in the state of Minnesota or nationally, and we're looking for art that can be integrated directly into the station architecture as opposed to separate pieces. So early on, the community and a group that we call co-designers, which was a group comprised of about 10 local residents, helped us establish some of the principles for the stationary design, and some preliminary thoughts about public art were that it could reflect and celebrate the dynamic or the diverse community cultures, environment, and seasons that make Rochester a unique and special place. And we think community engagement will be a really important aspect of this, and are really interested to get new artists' viewpoints and respond to this, whether you know Rochester well or whether it's a someplace that you need to become more familiar with. So we have some preliminary thoughts about in the RFQ about some community engagement up front, but we'll look forward to kind of finalizing the details of that with artists that get selected. And then I think it's important to note that the design team wants to establish a collaborative relationship with the artists that are selected going forward. We have a lot of history with the project, and we're really excited about the opportunity to infuse some new energy into it. And a good part of our role will be to provide that technical support on aesthetics and durability, and kind of thinking about the implementation of the art concepts. So we want to establish a good collaborative relationship from the outset. Next, please. So I do want to make note before I get too much further into the overview here, that we want to leave most of our hour here for Q&A. So we have some assistance on that to kind of field your questions as we go, and we'll try to make note of those and make sure we cover everybody's questions, and can open it up and unmute people later on in the conversation here to have a little bit of a dialogue. So this map graphic provides an overview of the planned route for Link Transit. It's primarily an east-west corridor of about 2.5 miles, which starts at the western side of town, with a station area called West Transit Village. You can see some of the blue in the map there. There is a complex of lakes and waterways called Cascade Lake in that vicinity. West Transit Village is currently mostly a property owned by Mayo Clinic and utilized for park and ride for staff to commute to the different campuses that Mayo has along this corridor. Moving a little bit further east, there's a station plan for 19th Avenue. That is a few blocks west of the crossing over Highway 52, which you can see illustrated in that gray bold line running north to south. Then the next station is at St. Mary's Transit Center. This location is at the doorstep of Mayo Clinic's St. Mary's Hospital. It's envisioned to be one of the higher ridership stations, and will have one of the more unique layouts from a station design perspective. Then continuing on east, there are stations planned for 6th Avenue. Then at 2nd Avenue. 2nd Avenue is also a main focus of the Mayo Clinic campus, and the more core part of the downtown business district in Rochester. The Civic Center station is near the riverfront and the Civic Center Arts Center. The public library is also located near that location, and there's a fair amount of residential use in that near vicinity as well. At that point, the route crosses over the Zumbro River and goes south for a few blocks along 3rd Avenue, and the terminus is at the downtown Waterfront Southeast station. This is a location that will be along 6th Street. So the project will be constructing a portion of 6th Street, and this is an area of the project where the city is also pursuing other plans for a larger district there, and our project will be only constructing kind of the first part of that, and kind of setting the stage and building the station in that location. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nathan Johnson with Formula Architects, to share with you a little bit more about the design of the station shelters and platform areas itself.
Thank you, Michael. As Michael said, my name is Nathan Johnson. I'm an architect. I'm working on the majority of the stations along the alignment. And just to mention that we've kind of dedicated the public art components are supposed because obviously these are going to be some of the areas by the community, and will be kind of the identifier for the community. What you will see the station concept, and I'm going to stay on this slide for just a little bit longer, Alicia, is we have what's a 10-foot by 80-foot essentially BRT platform. So the Link is a rapid transit line that has 60-foot articulated buses that support the platform, and the platform is designed to fit that bus and to kind of create sheltering, different type of sheltering environments along the platform. And what we've done in this, and you'll see in a later diagram, is identified a lot of ways that artists can touch with the budget that you have available. Some of the main components of the platform is on the right side. You see what we have been referring to as a marker, which is right now it's about 25 feet tall, and it's a significant kind of identifier of the transit line. It has information in there. So at the base of it, there's going to be a dynamic screen that can provide information about this specific location. All the platforms, we try to cover the majority of them with a canopy so that people can stay out of the elements if needed to, if they're waiting for the transit line. So you can see the kind of wood ceiling canopy along the majority of the platform, supported by a couple columns. And then we create two different types of sheltering environments. And the first one that you can kind of see in the foreground, we kind of refer to it as a booth, which is more like a U shape with a bench in there, which is probably, we anticipate people maybe not waiting as long. One thing to mention about the transit line, I believe the headways between buses, so buses are rapid, they come about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the time of day that the bus is running, but anticipated that there's going to be a lot of buses and a lot of people using this corridor. As the other type of shelter that you can see on the end, which is much larger, is an enclosed shelter, and that shelter will have heating within inside that space. So it's going to be open air, but there will be heating lamps that kind of hang from the ceiling, so people can be a little bit warmer in that environment. And then we also were, as we were working with the co-designers as we navigated this process, is also providing places where people can just stand outside. Minnesota, obviously, we have some tougher winters where it gets very cold here on occasion, but then we also have great summers and falls and springs that people really like to enjoy the outdoors. So we wanted in the design of the station to provide a variety of different environments for people to wait for the next bus that's going to come. You can go to the next slide, Alicia. So what you saw on the previous slide was the prototypical station. We have a couple of enlarged locations, two at St. Mary's, where there's basically a vertical enclosure building or a transit center, which connects into a subway level. And so that's what you can see, where instead of having that kind of end shelter that you saw on the prototypical station, what we have at this station is an actual elevator enclosure building. And then that connects into a subway that will hopefully connect into, has the ability to connect into St. Mary's Hospital. That's still being determined, but it does allow you to cross the street, 2nd Street Southwest, and go over to the transit center. We don't have a slide of that image. We also have another vertical enclosure building near kind of the central Mayo Clinic location on 2nd Avenue, which has some similarities to this building. The actual vertical enclosure building is not quite as large as illustrated kind of in this location. One thing I will mention specifically about when we're in some of the more historic areas where we have the 25-foot tall marker at the prototypical stations along the corridor, we're going to have a shorter marker at some of the historic locations within the city. So you'll see this shorter marker, which is 15-foot tall instead of being 25-foot tall, to kind of identify this location. And that's true at both the St. Mary's campus. So there's 2 platforms here, and then at the 2nd Avenue platform, which is closer to the St. Mary's area. You can go to the next slide, Alicia. So the way we've been approaching kind of art as an opportunity is we've assigned kind of a budget, but we're not being prescriptive that an artist needs to specifically touch this specific location at this platform. What we've basically done instead is identified opportunity locations. So within the transit platform, we have a lot of different places that art could touch, and it's going to be obviously dependent on the budget. But within the marker, we identify kind of a metal screen or a metal mesh that could be replaced with an artist design kind of metal screen or metal mesh. You can work on a lot of the stations have kind of these railings across the back, which separate kind of the pedestrian user from the transit user. So maybe integrating art into there. We have these stone columns, which are on the platform. And if there's some opportunities to get art kind of integrated into the stone columns as well. And then if you wanted to look at like decals or something on the glass, that's also an opportunity. And lastly, we're also looking for creative artists who maybe want to do something with light. If we're definitely willing to experiment with some light shows. There's some availability associated with that, specifically as it gets integrated into the marker concept or into the ceiling of the canopy. Other things that we just kind of mentioned here is that we've seen some things done with like pavement art with like poems or something in the pavement. You can also do something with the curb along the back edge, but we're just basically saying these are all the different places that art can touch. We're going to be looking to you as public artists to kind of help us develop ideas about how art does want to touch each location. And the idea being that each location could be different or it could be similar depending on however the process unfolds. You can go to the next slide, Alicia. So what we're asking for you in the RFP RFQ is a statement or a project approach that responds to 3 primary questions. We have a site set up for cafe public art call, and these questions are actually embedded in your response in that site. But a description of why art in civic spaces is important, a description of how you foster and support collaboration. So one thing that we are aware of is that collaboration, you're going to be collaborating with us as the design team, but you may even have an opportunity to collaborate with other artists if you so choose to kind of build your team. A description of your strategy to develop artwork concepts that can be implemented within the budget and time frame. So obviously the city of Rochester has a certain budget associated with this project, and just making sure that we're looking at that budget and making sure that we're aligning the artistic scope with the budget that we have available to us. And then you'll see the successful artist statement project approach will, we kind of give some words: engage a DMC, be experiential, have a clear vision, be collaborative, a number of items that we've kind of identified as key points. You can go to the next slide. Our intent in the way that we're structuring this project is that the artist will actually be joining our design team. So SRF, as Michael alluded to, is the lead engineer for the project. And obviously this is a 2.5 million, excuse me, not 2.5 million, 2.5 mile line. It's a more expensive project than that, but it's a 2.5 mile line that is going to run through kind of the heart of the city of Rochester, and SRF is the lead engineer on that. The way that we're structuring it is that the artists are going to become a collaborative partner with the design team to develop public art that can be actually integrated into the station area. We are finishing up our 60% documents sometime in June, or maybe it's early July, I think now is where the schedule has us. But it's anticipated that the artists come on the team between 60 and 90% to really kind of develop those concepts and figure out how those concepts can integrate into the station architecture. There are a total of 12 platforms and I believe 7 station areas that Michael showed on the map earlier. So a lot of opportunity for art to be integrated in different ways. You can go to the next slide. So this gives you kind of a high level timeline of what's kind of unfolding. So we issued the RFQ on May 9th, and then we have a Q&A session, which is today. We would like for you to have written questions back to us by next week. I believe that's Tuesday is June 1st. And then our intent is to post an addendum fairly quickly. And then the RFQ is due June 24th. I forget the exact date on the RFQ document, but you can review that. It's posted on Cafe and it's posted on the City of Rochester's site. We anticipate shortlisting artists by July 8th and doing interviews with artists between July 11th and July 15th. And then near like the 3rd week of July 18th to July 22nd, we'll be notifying the artists that have been selected to move forward with the project, and then working through approvals and contracts in August. And go to the next slide. And then, so contact information that you can see, we have set up a Cafe account. So the call for entry, you can see that link there. There's a link to the City of Rochester. The station kind of information is located there on the actual RFQ document that you can use and review, which talks to the specific requirements related to this request. And then all questions should go to Michael Jiske, who's on the line right now. So he's kind of administering all the contractual components of the RFQ. Next slide. And with that, are there any questions? We have a Q&A in the webinar that you can post to, and then we'll kind of field those questions as they come in. And I believe, Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong, so if someone raises their hand, you have the ability to kind of let them answer, to kind of bring them forward so they can answer, or we can answer a question verbally.
Yes, and you and Michael are also both co-hosts, so you can also do that as you would like. But first up, I see we have Stasia. I apologize if I mispronounced that, but you are allowed to talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Yes.
Stephanie.
So I haven't had a chance to go through the lengthy RFQ yet, but can you please explain the budget per platform? I'm seeing it's $60,000 per station. And then I'm seeing the artist stipend, etc. So can you just talk us through that a little bit? And then my second follow-up question will be, is there any preference given to Minnesota-based artists?
You were correct that the figure that you stated, Stasia, we have currently budgeted for $60,000 per platform. As Nathan noted, there are 7 stations, but 12 platforms overall. Some of the station areas only have 1 platform. And we are breaking that down a little bit further, and that we're allocating 20% of that budget to the artist stipend. So that's $12,000 per platform. And then the remainder of that is the actual capital cost of the artwork. And there's a little bit of information about this in the RFQ as well, but I'll explain in a little bit more our thought process on implementation. So what we're envisioning here is that the artists will join the design team and help develop concepts and the details that will be implemented by the design team into the actual construction drawings. Those will be bid with the overall transit project in early 2023. And so that remaining $48,000 figure is the budget that we've allocated for the actual artwork, which will be fabricated by a contractor and installed in the station designs.
So can an artist do the concept as well as the fabrication? Like, for example, I'm a professional mosaic artist. I'm specializing in public art. So I usually do the design, fabrication, and installation. Is that what you're intending in some cases?
So the way that has happened on projects I've worked on before, let's say, so if you actually do the mosaic, that basically we write into the specifications that you have to purchase the mosaic from such and such. We have to look at that sometimes in the context of kind of our bidding requirements, but yes, we have done that before where the artist actually does the fabrication and then they do the design work up front. We just have to structure. That's why we'll be looking at how we structure our documents to kind of convey that. But it's very much about how do we integrate that component of your artwork into the station area.
Okay, thank you.
And the other part of your question was about, is there any, I forget the term you used, but is there any preference shown to Minnesota artists? We intentionally are keeping the art call open nationally, so that we get hopefully a variety of applications. I know there is definitely an interest on the city's part to kind of build the capacity of the arts community locally and within the state, but there's no direct preference shown in the evaluation for being a Minnesota resident or Minnesota-based artist.
Thank you.
I see Cassie has a question as well, and Cassie, I'll unmute you, or maybe Alicia, you could unmute Cassie so that she could ask that.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if you can further explain the planning and leading of community engagement activities that was mentioned in the cafe listing.
Sure, Nathan, why don't I take a first shot and you can build on that. This being a very public project, it's really important that we seek ways to get community input on many aspects of it. There's been a lot of outreach on the base station designs, and I think it's our hope that to achieve some of those goals that I noted at the outset about responding to the Rochester and neighborhood context, that there's we create opportunities for the artists to engage with the community and have a little give and take. So we do not have a prescribed way that we envision that might happen initially. As you may have noted in the RFQ, we do think there's value in having some in-person engagement. And so I think we listed, at a minimum, one in-person engagement, one online type of a engagement session as well. And this, I think once artists are selected, there can be some coordination amongst the group of artists and the design team to determine the appropriate way to do this. It could be a collective type of an event, or perhaps it might be better to individualize it. That's yet to be determined.
One thing I'll just add to what Michael said, we've had a lot of community engagement to date. We actually established a co-design group, which was, I think it was 10 community members that were actively involved in kind of the design process and helping us design the actual station area and the components of it. I think to Michael's point is we don't have it prescriptively designed how the artists are going to engage the community. I think we would want to work with you all to develop that, but this community is heavily engaged and very interested in the work that you will be developing to enhance the station environments.
Yeah, I think we're definitely really interested in innovative ways to approach that too. That brings some energy to the process and get people excited about it. Something that may step outside the bounds of a typical online webinar or open house type of a scenario. But we look forward to having more discussion with the selected artists at that point. I think, Cassie, if you have ideas about that, something that could work into your response and your application. It's really a component of some of those things that Nathan outlined for you a little while ago.
Thank you for that. I don't know if you guys can still hear me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next, it looks like we have Wayne. So Wayne, I will allow you to talk. And you'll just want to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Thanks for doing this today. I had a couple of questions. One was regarding the ceilings. There seem to be fairly elaborate wooden ceilings. I'm wondering if you're open to artwork being involved in that particular area. You didn't mention that. So that was one question. The other question was, I've done some interactive lighting projects before and run into pretty major restrictions in terms of what colors I can use with the lighting. And it's usually in relation to how close it is to the intersection. So I'm wondering, would I be able to go the full range of color in an installation, or would I be in the one I did in Las Vegas? Basically, by the time we got it accepted, it was dialed down to blue entirely versus the full range of color I had initially intended. Those are the two questions I'm most curious about.
So as right now, we did not identify the wood ceiling as an opportunity to kind of do work in it. I guess artwork in it. The primary concern with us is obviously kind of long-term maintenance. If we have custom artwork in the wood and it's kind of piece by piece and it gets damaged or something happens to it, then the owner has to kind of repurchase that, or there's some complexity related to that. But that was our reasoning for not looking at the wood. In regards to lighting, I can't comment directly on the full range that you'll be able to do. Obviously, we are close to an intersection, but our intent was to have dynamic lighting controls available at the station platform. And we have identified like the marker and possibly the ceiling of the canopy as an opportunity for dynamic lighting to be integrated. But I can't answer the question about kind of the limits on color, but I think we can add that to our addendum. We can get some more clarification from Public Works in the city of Rochester if they're going to provide any limitations on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne. And with that, we will move on to Kevin. I will allow you to talk.
Hi, I have a request and then two questions. The request is relative to the cafe application. At this point, the support, visual support are still images only. My work is as interactive time-based art with new media, and it would be really helpful to communicate the work that I've done to be able to use video, which is one of the things that Cafe allows. It demonstrates the interactivity of the work that I do better than a still image. So that's the request. And if it's too late to do that, I certainly understand that. But if that's something that could be incorporated, that would be helpful. So my two questions then, I'm assuming these answers perhaps are yes, because in the description relative to the markers, I'm assuming that there would be potential locations that would be temperature controlled housing spaces, such that if there were equipment pieces that were used in, light control, video control, those types of things, that there would be temperature controlled housing situations. Is that something that is already designed into numerous areas, or is that something that could be? So that's the first question. Then the second question relative to that is, in the works that I've done at other sites, I have found that being able to have the ability to check the status and be able to, if there is ever an issue with the installation itself, to be able to control that very easily. And the way I do that is just through Wi-Fi connections to that. So if there's internet connections. So the questions are the temperature controlled spaces, and the second one, is there planning for some form of internet connections to the spaces? Thanks.
So I can start, and then Michael, maybe you can finish. In regards to the cafe site, I think we'll take that under advisement, and we'll be able to respond to that in the addendum. But Michael and I probably just need to put our heads together to make sure that it's acceptable, but then we can update the media kind of requirements on cafe. But we'll respond to that in the addendum. In regards to the temperature controlled spaces, yes, we have a lot of comm equipment on the platform. So we actually have a communication cabinet, which you did not see in any of the renderings, which is kind of off platform, which there will be some temperature controls in there. And in addition to that, what I didn't mention when I talked about where the map, there's a digital screen there. It's actually a two-sided digital screen. There's the digital screen that faces the transit user that provides transit information, and there's a digital screen proposed that faces the pedestrian. So that digital screen could provide specific information about the community. Obviously, if that's something you'd like to look at from an artist standpoint, I think we can have conversations about it. The one thing I will mention is there is some concern from the city of Rochester about the quantity of programming that they need to be able to maintain within these environments, and our engineers would probably be able to talk about that a lot more. But in regards to temperature controls, yes, there are some environments that have temperature controls for some of the equipment that you're referring to, Kevin. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
I would only add that it's probably something we would have to consult with others on the engineering team, and whether existing features are already planned for the transit service could accommodate that, or whether some additional accommodation or space needs to be made for different technology that is a possibility. It's hard to give a definite answer right now, Kevin.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Next up, we have a question from Stacia, which is, are there equity goals established for artist selection, for example, gender and race? Also, is any consideration given for certified DBEs?
Stacia, thanks for helping us with the pronunciation of your name. Right now, in the RFQ, there are no specific goals noted. Our art subcontracts will need to follow the guidelines for our overall design contract, which does have DB requirements. I think this is something that we will follow up on in the addendum. I'll have to review that contract language and we'll provide a little more specificity on that. Thanks for that question.
I don't see any more questions in the Q&A box or any raised hands.
Is there any last questions that people have that they'd like to ask regarding any information that we shared with you today here on screen or in the RFQ documents? Or does anybody have any input on kind of access, any challenges to access to the information through the cafe site or the project website? If so, we'd love to hear about that so we can try to correct it.
So I see Stacia has her hand raised, and then Wayne.
Oh, great. Go ahead, Stacia.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I don't want to be a hogger here on the questions, but this I think will help everyone. Can you just give us a sense of what would get your team most excited about designs? Like, are you really looking for, something that is place and culture making? Are you looking for a lot of color? Like, is there anything that you can share around that sort of vibe and tone?
Well, I first just want to make clear that
I know it's just the RFQ stage. I know that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to respond to. That we are asking for qualification now. We're not asking for specific art design proposals. But from a selection standpoint, I just want to be clear that neither Nathan or I are the decision makers in kind of determining that selection. We are there to help facilitate the process primarily, and kind of advise the city, and we have an advisory committee and advise them from a technical standpoint and share some of our past experiences with integrating art in the transit environment. So there is an art advisory committee that is composed of several city staff members, some people from the Destination Medical Center staff, and a number of community members from the public, as well as people that are part of local arts organizations that will be we'll be facilitating a selection process with them, and ultimately they'll make a recommendation on which artist to select.
Just build on Michael's comment. We have a very diverse group that's going to make the choice. Michael and I are not going to make the choice. We're technical advisors to the artist selection committee, but of the diverse people, I think they're looking for people who are creative, looking for people that know Rochester. I think one of the things for your consideration as artists is a concern for the city of Rochester is their ability to maintain the art long term. So having an understanding of kind of what that means in a public environment, that we're creating public art, that there may be some abuse associated with it. So making sure anything that gets proposed, obviously you're not proposing anything right now, but in even some of your past work, as you kind of illustrate that, being able to demonstrate that the artwork can be maintained long term, I think is going to be important.
If that is it, I will next allow Wayne to talk.
My last question is just a little clarification on the budget. So essentially there's 48,000 set aside for the production of whatever that piece you make is. If engineering is required and installation, is that covered on your end, or is that something the artist would absorb in creating the piece? Sounds like you're having the designs fabricated rather than the artist, but I'm wondering how the breakdown happens in terms of engineering.
The final detailing of the designs will be done by the architecture team and integrated into the design drawings. We have budget for that. In some cases, situations like this there's a benefit to having shop drawings, which then become the responsibility of the bidding contractor or fabricator to do those things. There is not additional engineering kind of upfront that the artist would necessarily need to account for. The architecture team is there to kind of provide that technical support.
As a clarification, so part of our team, we have structural engineers, we have electrical engineers who are participating members that will be a resource. Correct, Michael?
Yes.
Yep.
That's really great information, because that can be such a huge part of producing any piece as well. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Alicia, I'm not seeing any other outstanding raised hands or anything. What about on your end?
Yes. It looks like we do have Station Wayne's hand still raised.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Want to make sure you had the chance to say everything. Since Statia's is still up, I'll allow you to talk again.
Stacia, did you have an additional question or comment, or is your hand still raised from your prior one?
No, sorry, that was my bad. I lowered my hand.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
No problem.
Well, I think in that case, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. As we noted at the outset, we're planning to publish the questions and responses and address them in an addendum. We would like to give you a little bit more latitude as you have a chance to consider the RFQ to ask additional questions. So those are due next Wednesday, June 1st. And then we will take another week or another couple of days, excuse me. We'll try to get answers back promptly by Friday, June 3rd. So hopefully that will get people headed the right direction and clear up as many of the questions as possible. And then the most important date is June 24th. That's when the submittals are due through the CAFE site. And we're excited. This process is rolling now. We hope we've cleared up a few things for you today, but my contact information is available in those different online locations. So please reach out to me in the interim if you do have additional questions, and we will try to help you out in that way. We're really glad you can make time today and have some interest in the project. The community is really excited about this aspect of the project. I think it's something that really the public connects with and will bring value to creating some unique quality to each one of the station areas. So thanks for considering it, and look forward to your submissions. With that, we'll conclude.
Thank you, everyone.